Yeah, it's never nice to have problems, but in 2020, it's nice to have non-COVID, non-politics problems. I
Oh,
guess.
good heavens, yes. Yeah.
Oh
It's
man.
funny. Brian and I got tested before Thanksgiving just to be
Uh-huh.
safe.
Hmm.
And we didn't find out until yesterday that we were both negative. So the
Oh,
whole point of doing it was, if we were positive or even thought we might be positive, we weren't going to go to Hilton Head. But
right,
we just found out yesterday we're negative. But I knew we were. But
right.
anyway, so
Yeah, my my wife's sister just sent her a note and said, "Hey, um, there's a college student up near you that is, in front of a friend's son or something, and he had gotten it and then was fine, and then a couple of weeks after he got it, he had like an enlarged heart
oh
uh,
my God.
because I can't remember what that's called, but there's like a name for it,
Mm-hmm. I've heard of it.
and now he's having all kinds of problems, and it was like while it was directly related to COVID, but it wasn't that rough while he had it, and then afterwards he's having issues.
Oh, I'm so, so sorry.
So anyway,
Yeah.
he'll probably be okay, but yeah, it
Well,
was
there are a lot of um, sort of weird peripheral, well, peripheral makes it sound trivial and it's not, but a lot of symptoms that, I mean, we're going to be learning about this disease for years and years and years. And there are
right.
things, and there's some people who have had it and they're going to have certain problems probably for the rest of their lives. And it just breaks my heart. The whole thing breaks my heart, but
Yeah,
um, breaks everybody's heart. I know, but anyway.
yeah.
Um,
Well, we've got Ronnie and Frank already in the chat with us today.
well,
So
hi, Ronnie and Frank. How are you?
let's jump in. So talk to me. What progress have you made in the last couple of days? I know we were talking beforehand, but
Yeah, well, not a lot because I just share with you that I found out that my beloved Mac Pro that had the warped had a warped shell, and it was doing this weird rocking thing when I tried to type, and it was like a table at a restaurant that wobbles. Only this was my computer, and I was having my problems with it. I mean, it was working just fine. It really was. And I, when I found out what was wrong with it, basically it was a swollen battery. And when I found out that a swollen battery means it could be a fire hazard, I decided maybe it was time to go ahead and get a new computer. And I'll tell you, my plan was to do a clean install and not transfer everything over and just install Adobe and install my software. And for one reason is because this new computer is only 512 gig. And my old computer was a terabyte. So I knew I was going to have to streamline everything and make things a lot cleaner. But and I tried really hard to not transfer everything over, but somewhere along the line I pushed a button and a bunch of stuff got transferred over. And then when I tried to download Adobe, oh, that was the first thing that happened. And this was Tuesday night, no, Wednesday night. We were supposed to Zoom with Brian's sister and brother-in-law, and we lost internet. Internet just went away. And it went away for long enough that we called Verizon and talked to them and, go through several minutes, hours. We were on the phone with them for an hour, and we ended up, talking to a computer and getting it to work. And they kept sending us email links. And my husband kept trying to say, we don't have internet. We can't look at the email links and figure out what it is you want us to do to fix it. Anyway, we were on them with them for an hour, and then just suddenly out of the blue, it started working again. So then we were fine. And this was like at 5:20. And the next day at exactly 5:20, it happened again. And this time the TV went out too. We had no internet. We had nothing. And we were on the phone with them again. They couldn't help us. They were supposed to have somebody come by today. And so we were going to be without internet, which means my husband couldn't do his job.
Yeah.
But then I just had an idea. I went downstairs to where the whole unit, not the modem, but I don't know what to call it, the box. I went downstairs and unplugged it from one outlet and plugged it into another one. And then it started working again. It's like, really? And it's been working ever since. So
that's bizarre.
It was bizarre. And I'll tell you, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but I wasn't real impressed with Verizon's their support. It really wasn't, they weren't real helpful, and they weren't, I won't go down that road anymore. But anyway, so then what year is the MacBook Pro?
Yeah.
Jacob, the one that I just had to say goodbye to, it's either a 2016 or a 2015. I'm not sure. I have to look. I think it might be a late 2015 or an early 2016. And 13-inch, 1 terabyte, it had i7. It was a nice little computer. I felt like playing taps when I turned it off. And I've still got a bunch of stuff on it. I'm going to keep it turned off. I might turn it on once in a while, get some stuff of it, and then shut it back down again, because the whole idea of a fire hazard scares the hell out of me. So
you can remove the battery and just keep it tethered to the wall, right?
I have no idea. In fact, I might talk to Apple, and find out. I know I could probably actually get the battery replaced or get it, and I just don't know if it's worth it. And I did have Apple Care, but I think Apple Care only lasts for like 3 years. Yeah. And I think it's so it's past that. And then I spent all day yesterday with Adobe, because I couldn't download any of my Creative Suite apps. They just it kept saying, there's a problem, there's a problem, there's a problem. And finally, Adobe had to get onto my computer. I had to let them remotely get on my computer. And I basically spent all day while they kept restarting, and they had to go in and dig around and find any remnant of any old Creative Cloud stuff that was really deep in the system, which is what I was trying to prevent in the first place. Right. But apparently some stuff had transferred over, and it took a good part of the day, and I couldn't do anything else, because every few minutes they would restart, or it would ask for my password. So I spent most of the day sitting there. Every few minutes I had to type in my password. It got to be around 4 o'clock, and I realized I hadn't eaten all day. All I'd had was coffee. And I was like, oh, no wonder I don't feel so good. I never eat breakfast, and then I didn't eat lunch. So, but it was just a exhausting day. And then I couldn't get Painter 2021 to load. I just paid money for it, and it was just a mess. But and then I couldn't get my tablet I had the wrong driver. It was just a mess. I spent all day yesterday and all day today. All I wanted to do was get all my other stuff done so that I could paint. And this is going to sound funny, and this is going to sound sexist. It might be, because it might be a woman thing, but I can't sit down and paint if the kitchen isn't clean. I know that's a woman thing. I think I have to, empty the dishwasher and load it back up and get the grocery. There's stuff that I have to do before I will allow myself to paint. And I think that's just me, but anyway, but I finally started. Oh, I also had to judge an art show, and I was supposed to be judging this art show, but I couldn't do it because my computer was occupied, and I could have opened up my old computer, but I didn't. I just didn't. So I did end up getting the art show judged, and I delivered my comments and got that done. But as far as producing anything myself, not this week. Last week I did. Last week I actually did a video for the first time, and I did it over Thanksgiving week. I did a promotional video for an art show for an organization I'm with, and I was pretty happy that I was able to get back into After Effects, and I was pretty happy with it. And I was like, wow, I haven't forgotten how to use After Effects completely, and I was able to figure out a few things, and it all came right back to me. That made me really happy. I thought I might have lost it at this point. And then I also found out today that I did sell a few paintings at a gallery where a bunch of my stuff is hanging. And the gallery owner hasn't told me yet. A friend of mine contacted me and said, oh, I saw your show and congratulations on the sales. I said, what sales? He said, well, I think my understanding is you sold 2 paintings. I said, oh, cool. So I don't even know which paintings sold, but apparently I did have a couple of paintings sell. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Anyway, so I don't know if that considered challenges or what I've been doing. I lumped it all together. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We'll do both. I'll do the same. So I did. I haven't gotten a ton done. I got these guys rigged up. So like in anime, where like they don't show the actual cut. So these guys are battle robots for those that haven't been following one. And they don't show the actual cut, but they show the slice anyway. So what's going to happen is you're going to see these guys wind up, but then the cut the screen will go black, and you'll just see a slash across the screen.
Oh, cool!
Kind of like delayed. So there's the slash. And
then cool!
And then this guy kind of does the slow slide.
Oh my gosh, these are great. Now, did you do the original drawings in traditional pen and ink? Because I'm seeing cross-stitching. It looks great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I used Autodesk Sketchbook for the inks and then Photoshop for the colors.
Got it.
Yeah, so I like Sketchbook's inking brush algorithms. They work. They're the brush engines. They work pretty well.
I've never used it. I'll have to check it out.
It's nice because it's free.
Free is good. We like free, especially now. I'm poor. I'm very poor right now.
Right. Go buy Kathy's paintings.
Please buy my paintings.
So this has been a weird week for sleep. Basically, has mainly been what's the challenge. Monday night, I was on a roll working on some client work, and finished that up about 4:30 in the morning, and then got up and taught an 8 o'clock class, and then a 9:45 class, and then anyway.
Corey, how do you do that?
I'll tell you how I do it. Is Tuesday night, I thought, after teaching all day, basically.
And you don't drink coffee? Oh my gosh!
I do not drink coffee. But after teaching, I said, I'm gonna take a nap. So about 7 p.m. I was like, I'm just gonna lay down and take a nap. So I still have my contacts in and everything. And I set my alarm. I don't know what happened. I slept for 14 hours.
Oh, well, you needed it. Oh my gosh. But your eyes were probably very unhappy with you.
Yeah, that was unpleasant. So the next morning I woke up and I was like, well, I guess that was it for the night.
Wow.
But then I had so much sleep that getting to sleep at a normal time Wednesday night was,
it throws you off.
Yeah, it's been this whole pendulum all week. So anyway.
My eyes are hurting just thinking about wearing my contacts for that many. I mean, I haven't worn contacts for years. I gave up, and I'm just happy wearing my glasses now. But I wore contacts for a very long time, and I wore I don't know how they are now, but at the time you were supposed to be able to sleep in them if you wanted to, but the eye doctors, the people who were selling the contacts said, oh, you can sleep in them. And my eye doctor says, no, you should not. Right. Don't ever do that. And I remember many times where I'd be working on schoolwork, and I'd be, it's like, okay, now I'm going to go to bed. And I go drag myself. And Brian, my husband, would say, did you take your contacts out? No, I don't want to take out my contacts. Get up and take out your contacts. You'll regret it if you don't. I don't want to take out my, so I actually remember sometimes where I would wake up and my contacts would be so dry after sleeping in them. I wouldn't even keep them. I just pinch them off and say, okay, you're done. And I'd have to get open up a new pair. But that
Yeah.
was a long time ago. But I don't miss wearing contacts, but I understand wearing them. But
I love contacts. It's so cold where I live half the year that glasses are not a feasible thing because
they fog up, or
they fog up. You know, you get snow and rain on them as you're walking to wherever, and then you wipe them off, and then you walk inside and they fog. And so it's like I can't see out of them half the time because they're either wet or foggy. You know.
oh dear.
Anyway, so
I understand.
contacts, but yeah, waking up with contacts like that is terrible. So anyway, so that was my progress and challenges. Not a ton of progress. It's been a lot of catch up and a lot of client work.
Well, that's good. That's still progress. If you're working on client work, that's work.
Yeah, I will have my first billboard I've ever designed.
Oh, cool.
In about a week or two. So I've never really sought out billboard work, but it was interesting, and I think I was telling my students today because I was giving them some feedback, and they were kind of low, and I said, "Hey, you know that this is normal, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, but you know."
I'm not even sure I know what billboard work is. I guess I'm old.
No, I mean,
I'm not sure what that is.
Just like designing and illustrating the billboard, like on the
Oh,
side.
an actual billboard. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. I thought that was some techie term that it passed me by that I didn't understand.
Oh,
so
yeah. Not that I'm aware of. No,
okay, right. An actual billboard. That's really cool.
Yeah, so
awesome.
It'll be fun. But anyway, I was telling him, you know, I had this great idea. I loved it. It was an awesome idea, and I illustrated it, and I mocked it up. And I showed it to about 6 different people. None of them got it.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, dang. So then I changed it up, and then I, did, my little impromptu focus groups of just random people that I'll send stuff to. And, I try to find people in my target audience and say, okay, tell me what you think this means. Tell me what you think it says. What is your opinion? And the first time I struck it hard, like everybody hated it.
Oh,
the client was like,
that can hit you in the gut when no one gets it.
Oh man, dang. So then I did the second one and everybody liked it. So I was telling them, I've been doing this for, 20 years. I've been doing this for as long as you've been alive. It still happens that you think you're doing something well, and then you get the feedback and it's not good. Like, this is normal. It's okay to feel like this, but get over it, because this is normal.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was just telling that story. So I'm hoping it'll be good, but I mean, it tested well.
That's good.
Limited, it's not like I'm doing like focus groups or scientifically, numerical studies or anything, but showing it to people, people got it. They got what it was. And so, yeah, I learned a lot about billboard advertising, because every foot tall that the letter is adds an extra second that can be viewed at 65 miles an hour.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, so I
never thought about that.
Yeah, they've done studies. And so anyway, so I was on the freeway before I was designing this, and I was looking at billboards, and I tell you what, at least in the area that I'm in, there is money to be made in well-designed, clearly communicated billboards with good.
I believe you.
It's either stuff that's nonsense that just doesn't make any sense, or it is so cluttered. Like a lot of the local car dealerships, it's like that is a newspaper insert that you have put onto a billboard. That's not
exactly. It's
terrible.
It's really funny, and that's actually true with when I see television advertising.
Yeah.
And they will in car dealerships seem to be one of the classic ones, or some of the local businesses, and they will have an advertisement, and it's really fun. My husband laughs at me because something will show up on the screen. The first thing I'll say is, I hate that font.
Right.
And I'll say, that's a terrible font. They shouldn't be using that. And but yeah, I believe you with billboards, but I never thought of that. Is the number of I mean the size of the letter dependent on that is
Yeah.
really cool. See, we don't really see billboards around here very much in Maryland, in the Washington D.C. area. You don't see them. There aren't that many. They're just
Yeah.
you don't see them, and part of that is probably there's probably some rule or law, but there's also probably because we're too congested. There's no place to put them, and
Oh,
I'm pretty sure they're not allowed on the Beltway, except for, I think there might be, I mean, there's hardly any in this area. Most of the time when we see billboards, it's when we're traveling. And one of the billboards that I always think about is, and they're so tacky, but they're memorable. And that is the whole stretch of 95 from as soon as you get into the state of North Carolina. There is a really incredibly tacky place at the border of North and South Carolina. It's called South of the Border. It's incredibly politically incorrect too, because it's basically they make it like south of the border. They make it. They use sombreros. They use all sorts of Mexican.
right.
Yeah, and how they're away to get away with it now because it's simply so politically incorrect.
Right.
But there are billboards. As soon as you get into North Carolina, they'll billboards saying how far you are from south of the border. And when I was a little kid, we used to look for them, and Brian and I, we still look for them, even though they're awful.
Yeah.
But as far as I mean, they've got really cheesy. I don't even want to say them because they're very disrespectful to the Mexican culture. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But as far as being able to see them and recognize them, they're very well branded. From miles away, oh, that is the south of the border, which is kind of effective. I mean, yeah. And they've definitely made a mark on our weird American culture. But so kind of cool. I never really thought about billboards that much, but that's really cool. And you're right. I think that it's a good form of advertising, especially in the parts of the country where you have miles and miles of road and nothing to see. So I think that's really, really a good point. But that's really cool. I'm really excited for you.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Do you find out what the results are? It's not like an ad where you can find out. You will find out what kind of.
I mean, as much as you can. So, I mean, when you're advertising traditionally, tracking the metrics and results is a little bit more difficult. But we have like a baseline. We have a baseline of traffic for this business, and we will be tracking mentions at the counter. So you try. The hardest thing is trying to train the counter staff to ask, like, "Hey, how'd you find out about us?"
Find out about us, yeah.
And then to track that. That has been the bane of my marketing career, is just trying to get people to just like, here's a piece of paper, here's a clicker, here's an app. Here, can I somehow, I will build anything that you need to, please just let me know this information.
I keep forgetting that you have a marketing background.
Yeah. I spent a long time doing that. But so there's that, and then there's also I'm introducing, it's a new campaign. So we will be doing in the future. We'll be doing animation. We'll be doing some pre-roll ads. We'll be doing some ads at the movie theaters, and if they open up, ads on. I'm gonna look into ad placement on things like Spotify and Hulu, and because I know Hulu can go local geographic now.
Yeah, I've seen local ads on Hulu. So
so we'll look into see if that's financially feasible, and then you start tracking as much as you can the phrases that are used in the campaign, and see if, because they're new, and so you see if there's an uptick in the use of those phrases. So we'll do some active listening.
That makes sense too.
Stuff like that, and then some other things. So if people start running around and saying, care is better than repair for car dealership or car, then we'll have seen at least some awareness campaign success. But we've got some actual metrics of how many new customers per week they're hoping to get based on this. And so the nice thing is there's two freeways in this area. One goes east-west and one goes north-south. And so there's no reason to go east or west really. And so there's all of the traffic that's on the freeway, 100% of it will see this. So
that's really cool.
So anyway, yeah. So we've got some stuff that's kind of, tracking or whatever as best you can. It's not like digital where you can say this many people clicked on it, this many people, whatever.
Right.
But even digital metrics are not exactly what you want to know. They're like around what you want to know. Like an impression means that the ad or the whatever showed up on someone's feed. It doesn't mean that they looked at it.
Yeah, I don't understand the difference between reach and impressions anyway. I thought that's what reach meant, but I know there's on Instagram, under insights, you'll have reach and impressions, and there's a whole bunch of different things, and I don't know the difference. And
so I think impressions it actually was on the screen, and reach was it had the potential to be on the screen based on the time that people were on there and the audience segmentation that you had. So one's potential, one's actual, and then clicks are somebody actually clicked on the thing. They took an action. But I mean, they've done studies that people don't even look at the right side of their screens anymore when they're on a desktop looking at the internet. They set up like eye tracking mechanics.
Yeah, we used to have one of those where I worked. They had an eye tracking. They had eye tracking software, and that was really very interesting.
Yeah.
What's on the right side of the screen?
That's because back in the 90s and 2000s, that's where everybody would place the vertical ads.
Well, and I know on Facebook the ads are on the right, which I pretty much ignore.
Yeah. And so what they've found, because I mean, the biggest, I went to a seminar for newspapers. This was 6 years ago or something like that, maybe 6 years ago. And newspapers are struggling, have been struggling for about 10 years.
Yeah, I know.
And they're trying to figure out what's going on. Well, at the time, the biggest thing they were trying to do was called native advertising, which I find, if not blatantly unethical, at least morally ambiguous. So the idea of native advertising is that you try to place the ad in the environment that it's in such a way that it's indistinguishable from the environment that it's in. So in a newspaper, you would have an article that was written by a journalist, and it was actually a paid ad for something.
Oh,
it doesn't look like a paid ad. And there have been different laws and different ethical suggestions and different things, and nobody's really come down on how to exactly differentiate those. But sometimes they say sponsored content. Sometimes they say this article is brought to you by Ford. Sometimes they say, sometimes there's a byline that includes the journalist that wrote it and the company that paid for it. Sometimes there's nothing, and it's just whatever. But I mean, the biggest part of journalism prior to 10, 15 years ago that it was huge was they called it the Chinese wall, which might be a non-PC term now, but they called it the Chinese wall between advertising and journalism, is that the people that sold the ads didn't get to talk to the reporters. And that never the twain shall meet, and that the advertising would not, or in theory should not, affect what was written or how it was written. And I went to this conference, and they were actually, it was a newspaper that had turned things around, and they were making tons of money, and they were seeing growth in an economy where people were fleeing from printed material. And so there's all these newspapers from around the country coming to learn what they had done. And I'm sitting there. I was invited to be there because I teach communication. And I'm sitting there going, you guys are learning the wrong thing because one of it was native advertising.
Wow.
And another thing was just basically stop doing news reporting and start doing memes. It was just fully buy into like pointless content, meme culture.
Oh.
And this newspaper had become exceptionally successful by metrics that don't matter, which I call vanity metrics. So they had become very successful in their vanity metrics, which they were able to leverage those vanity metrics to their advertisers, and the advertisers were buying it hook, line, and sinker on the vanity metrics, because this was back before Cambridge Analytica and stuff like that. And so you could segment an audience like you shouldn't be able to. You could segment an audience like you couldn't believe. And so anyway, it was fascinating to see this, and they were all trying to figure this out. And I'm like sitting there going, facts are important and journalism is important. And I understand that the current system that you guys are in, that you need to keep the doors open financially, but what you're doing is you are moving into trying to compete with YouTubers and Vine at the time and whatever. It's like, don't try to chase this trend. Like, you should adapt and you should grow and you should learn, but don't lower your journalistic integrity. Like, that's your competitive advantage. And in the marketplace of ideas, you have a term that says that you are authentic and to be trusted. And it's called journalistic integrity. If you sell that, for a mess of pottage or a couple bucks, you are going to lose out on the only reason that anybody would ever come to you, because other people are going to be significantly better at creating easily consumable, empty calorie content.
Unfortunately, I think we have an awful lot of that now. And it's hard to know who to trust or what to believe. And that bothers me all the time. But
I've heard it described as we have evolved from the information age to the disinformation age.
That's a good way of describing it. I don't know. I think I've heard that before. It might have been from you, but that I think you're right. And basically, whoever shares the same opinion you already have is the source you're going to trust.
Right. And you've got confirmation bias. All of us have confirmation bias. And so we look for the things that make us feel good and comfortable. Yeah, it's fascinating. I went to Adobe Max. This is a couple of years ago.
I would love to go to Adobe Max one year, but go on.
It's fun. I don't want to say I'm a pessimist, because I'm really actually quite optimistic, but when I think about tech or politics or humanity in general, I get a little bit
cautiously cynical, maybe, or cautiously.
Yeah, I'm fairly cynical, but I try to be optimistic about things. I have hope. I think that's maybe I'm a hopeful pessimist. I don't know, but I go to Adobe Max, and every time they do sneaks, it's like, this is what we're working on behind the scenes. Okay, so they have all these different stuff. They have the Bash, and that's like this big party where they do stuff. They've got Premiere where I can't remember what that one's called, but they've got the big showcase where they showcase all the new things that they're rolling out. And then they have sneaks, and sneaks is they basically are such a giant company that they can pay engineers to experiment. And so they just have these little pods of little software engineers that are like, I'm going to see what I can do if I can do this, right? And they play with stuff. And sneaks, they tell you what they're playing with. So a few years ago, I remember it was I can't remember if it was Key or Peele, but one of those guys. He was like the comedy relief. They always have some comedian to bounce ideas off of or whatever. And he was up there. And this guy, this like one of the nerdiest guys you'll ever see, gets up there and he's talking. He's obviously not a presenter. He's a software engineer. And he's like, yeah, we've figured out how to, if we have a minimum of 20 minutes of someone's voice, we can make them say anything in any tone. And
so he
That's
said, scary.
Yeah, he said, Mr. Peele, we've written a joke for you that you've never said, because we have we have enough audio of your voice. And so they said, so they wrote this joke, and then they had him say it. And so the software said it, and it sounded exactly like him. And then he said, now we're going to say it. Now we're going to say the same thing, but we're going to make you angry as you're saying it. So then they went to the little slider and they slid angry over, and it sounded like him being angry. And they slid the other one over, and it sounded like him being happy. And it's, they're dialing it in. They were typing, and it was live. It was live, and it was immediate. And so I don't think it was instantaneous at the time. So I think there would be a delay if you tried to do it live. But they would type it in, take it half a second, and then it would spit it out.
I'm kind of scared.
Oh yeah, and they were all excited. They're like, "Hey, isn't this great?" And he goes, "How are you supposed to tell what's real and what's false anymore?" Like, he wasn't even cracking a joke. He was like, "This is terrifying," and it was you could tell it was the first time it had occurred to that software engineer that this would be a problem. And so then I got on Twitter, because they always have a hashtag. I got on Twitter and I said, in case anybody's wondering, Adobe just killed all audio evidence in court.
Mm-hmm.
They called it Photoshop for audio. And
wow.
It is indistinguishable. The file is indistinguishable.
So you can't even look at the waveform and tell the difference?
No.
Wow.
And so then they pretended like that didn't happen. They killed it. No,
I'm sorry. Once you open that Pandora's box, it's out there.
Oh yeah.
And
this last year, they released an initiative, which was basically to combat their own Frankenstein's monster that they created.
Adobe did?
Adobe did, is they said, we're not exactly sure how this is going to happen, but we are going to release a digital truth initiative to basically deep fakes, right? Because there are simple apps now where you can just, take someone's face and map it on somebody else's face and whatever. And people are doing, there's been court cases on this where people will take an ex and they'll do revenge porn, and they'll take their face and put it on an adult actress's face, and in a court of law, the court said that was not defamation of character because it was parody. So the law has not caught up to the technology yet, and it's a huge problem. But Adobe said that they are going to try to track every image and every audio file and every movie file on the internet back to its original source, and embed metadata into the files to tell when, who, and how, and what was changed and altered, so that you could basically, there would be a digital signature to know if it was the original photograph, or if it's been altered by Photoshop, or if it's been messed with, or the audio file is the original file, or whatever. And I don't know how you do that when there's like billions of videos, uploaded to YouTube every 5 seconds or whatever. I don't know what the stat is, but there's so much new content being created. I'm not sure how you do that, but yeah. And
what is the expression? You can't unsqueeze you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
Blockchain. I don't know what that is, but
blockchain is like, it's like cryptocurrency is based on blockchain. So it's basically a unique identifier that's extreme. I'm oversimplifying it because I don't really understand it, but it's a unique identifier that makes it extremely impossible to make a digital file be duplicated, basically. So wow. it would give you the ability to have a unique identifier on files and stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the curtains that they'll make an announcement, and then that announcement, no one will ever mention it again. And then a couple of years later, you see the NSA has it now or something.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that happens pretty frequently. So anyway, I don't know. Why did I start talking about that?
I don't know.
I just want to.
It's making me think of a lot of, I don't know, because I'm such a movie person. It's making me think of the movie The Circle, which
Oh, I
was
don't.
not a very good movie, with
Oh,
Tom Hanks and Emma Watson. I love both of them, but it wasn't a very good movie. But the book was pretty good by, I think it's Dave Eggers who wrote it. Worth reading. But it's basically talks about, and this was many years ago, and it talks about, it's basically a Google-like organization.
okay.
And it's kind of scary what they can do and how much control they have. And the other thing, it makes me think of that one line from Jurassic Park where Jeff Goldblum says, "You've been trying so hard to figure out whether you can do something. You haven't stopped to think about whether you really should.
Right.
You're trying to figure out if you could do something. You didn't stop to think about if you should."
Yeah. Frank is asking if we're talking about conspiracy theories. I'm not. I'm not talking about conspiracy theories. I'm talking about things that I've actually seen with my own eyes that the tech companies have done.
Yeah, it's not that far out there, but these are all things that are clearly possible anyway. So
Yeah.
if an evil genius gets it, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
An evil genius so much as just somebody with more money than most countries that lives in Northern California and runs a tech company.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. I think it is going to get to the point where you don't need actors or actresses to be on set anymore.
Oh yeah, and they've been predicting that one for years. I don't know why I keep referring to movies, but I'm a movie person. There was a movie a long time ago with Albert Finney and Susan Day. Susan Day, do you remember who she is?
Mm-mm.
You probably don't remember. I mean, The Partridge Family was way before your time. David Cassidy.
Yeah, I watched it though.
Susan Day played Laurie. And anyway,
Okay.
the movie was Susan Day and Albert Finney, and it was basically what they did is they mapped people, and then they used them in advertising, and you didn't need actors and actresses anymore. You just used these digitally mapped, and this was years ago. I mean, this
Yeah.
was, and they're saying that already. I have heard that already, that they are that's possible even now. So
yeah, I mean, it's getting, I don't know,
there's a way to do deep fakes on a live Zoom call.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's gotten to the point where if you've got enough processing power, you can stiff really. So this is what I always tell everybody. I think it's not a stretch to say that this is going to continue to happen, that anything that can be automated will be automated, right? It's going to be there. If I can pay some cute actor or actress, $10 million for what they look like and act like and sound like one time, and then make an infinite number of movies with them, that's more efficient. It's more effective, than trying to get everybody's schedules together. So I'm sure people are working on that, right? Or if somebody dies in the middle of production, and we still need their character. We've seen that recently with the Star Wars. Not really done well, but I mean, 5-10 years from now, it'll look indistinguishable from the original.
We saw that in Star Wars. I knew we saw it in Star Trek.
Yeah, Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher.
Oh, Carrie Fisher, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry.
And then,
God bless you, Carrie.
Moff Tarkin.
Moff Tarkin played Chewbacca? Who did Moff Tarkin play?
No, he was he was initially supposed to be he was initially supposed to be the villain, but everybody liked Darth Vader's outfit better.
Oh,
so that's actually how that happened. But he was the big actor. I can't remember his name. But anyway, so he was the big actor that was in the original Star Wars Episode 4. But he died, long since died. And so when they made the sequel trilogy. He was in it as a
Wow.
CG person. And it's pretty obvious. They still don't really have the teeth and the skin right, but they're close. But anyway, all of that things that robots can do are going to continue to become, more ubiquitous, more used, more efficient, more cost effective. And so I continue to see in the marketplace room for illustrators and animators and cartoonists and painters and photographers and people that are creating what humans need to be there for. And so if you can bring some humanity to your work, that's huge. It's really important.
Yeah.
It's because
that's a good point.
Machine learning is good at brute force attack on information. It takes a huge amount of information and it processes it. It's a pattern recognition machine,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a creator, right? And so it can mimic, it can recognize patterns and repeat, and it can recognize complex patterns and very, like being able to. I mean, you look at what happened with several of the things during and around Cambridge Analytica. Somebody was coming up with a camera basically that you could point at anyone, and it would tell you within like a 90-something% accuracy of their emotional state, because it could tell flush and skin color, and it could read facial expressions.
I've heard of this. Yes.
The intent of that was to augment people with autism and other people on the spectrum that were had difficulty or were unable to read facial expressions and social cues and things like that, and to basically tell them, this person is saying this in an angry way, this person is saying this in a happy way, this person is joking, this person is being sarcastic, which is awesome. Then it disappeared. Nobody heard of it again. And it got wrapped up into surveilling the people. So somebody bought it and started using it to surveil the populace.
Well, I would think it would be good for. I'm going to be silly now, but I wouldn't mind having a big Hero 6 nurse
right,
hang out and tell me and be able to tell when I need a hug or I'm not feeling well.
Yep.
And yeah, actually, I'm going to say something mean, but I've had a few doctors in my life that I would have been much happier with a big old robot than.
Oh yeah.
But.
Yeah. So anyway, I think if there's something that we can do that is human, it involves creativity and reason or nonlinear thinking or illogical thinking or out of the box thinking, design thinking, methodologies, things that come up with irrational connections, things like that. That's all stuff that computers and software and robots and everything, they might be able to do that eventually, but that is going to be way harder for them because they're in it in the pattern recognition and the brute force attack. That's basically well, like an interesting thing that I saw this morning. So my son is 2.5. He's starting to piece together words into sentences, not full sentences, but he's getting there. But he was interesting because
ridiculously cute.
Oh, he's so cute. Yeah, he's a little Sesame Street monster. But he picked up this tube of baby lotion, and it had a line drawing of a baby on it. It doesn't look like a baby, right? But I know it's a baby because I'm an adult and I know what drawing is. But he's 2.5, and he looked at that and he said, "Baby." And to me, that's fascinating that humans are able to do that, because computers can't do that, right? If you can't show a computer, a drawing of a cat, if it has only seen like 2 images of cats, and ask it what animal it is, it won't know.
That's why they use what is it? Don't they use images and stuff like that when they're trying to prove that you're not a robot? And they say, tell us which of these 6 images has a car in it and
right.
things like that.
Right. And it's because it takes a super AI that has been shown hundreds of thousands of images of everything and cataloged it and checked it and cross-checked it and seen things at different angles and watched video of those things and analyzed it and been told. And if it miscategorizes any of those things early on, then it learns the wrong thing.
Right.
But if they learn the correct thing, then they can start to identify stuff. But it's because they've recognized a pattern. But humans don't learn the same way that AI learn. Humans don't learn by brute force. We don't learn by watching hundreds. I mean, my son has only met 2 cats, right? They live in our house. Mm-hmm. He knows 2 cats, but he can see a cat that looks nothing like our 2 cats and know that it's a cat. Because we make inferences and we make logical leaps and we make rationalizations and justifications in our thinking that helps us to connect things that are unconnected. And that's a different way of thinking than software does. Mm-hmm. So if you can take that type of humanity and put it into your work, whether that be music or art or whatever it is, I think you're going to be better off than doing something that can be easily programmed or doing something that's why in my teaching, I struggle so much when students want me to give them the step-by-step process. As I said, hey, listen, if I can easily put this in 17 steps, then it's pointless for you to know because a computer will be doing it soon. Why would you bother learning it? I want you to think, use the tools and come up with something that nobody's thought of before. Mm-hmm. Or a new way of doing something old, like think and rationalize and create and do something interesting, because there is no room in the marketplace for instruction followers, because sets of instructions, that's just one step away from being code.
So, yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
So I don't know when the system is going to catch up with financial compensation. But creatives are where it's at, man. I mean, that's the future of humanity, because without that, there is no humanity. We will just easily be replaced.
Oh, well, yeah, that is true. Yeah, that's true. Cool. That's the one thing. That's the one good thing about the whole thing, because I feel like when I was in high school, I read a bunch as part of an English class. We read Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, 1984. I've forgotten what else we read, but just about every dystopian novel I've ever read, and I don't read them anymore. They scare me too much. At least a certain aspect of it has come true. Now We're still alive. We're still moving forward, but it's all happening. And,
go read how they describe the political discourse in 1984.
I have yet to read it again, because when I read it in high school, I remember enough of it that I know that so much of it is happening, has been happening. And actually, Animal Farm was even harder. And I read Animal Farm in 6th grade.
Yeah.
And when I read Animal Farm, I remember thinking, well, this would never happen.
Right.
And it's actually, I think Animal Farm is closer to a lot of the things that have been happening to us. So.
Oh, yeah. And then you think of like The Matrix in the 90s. Mm-hmm. It's like humans becoming batteries for the machines to take over. That'll never happen. And then nowadays I'm like, I don't know that we're a good source of energy, but I can totally see the machines taking over. Mm-hmm. And we're willing them to do it. We're like, yes, augment my reality. Go ahead. Well, even classes where you change what I see.
Even and I think we're both Marvel geeks.
Yeah.
I know I am, and I know you are. Didn't want to call you a geek, but and there's that one scene in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, which is probably one of my favorite of all the movies. And when they're talking to when they're in the bunker, and they're talking to the artificial intelligence that was the Professor Guy, who was Swiss, and he talks about how we take your freedom away from you, and you're going to fight. But if we make the world so chaotic, and you willingly give away your freedom, that's another story.
Yep.
And in a lot of ways, we're doing that.
Oh yeah.
And I am as guilty of it as just about anybody. But
oh, we all are. I mean, think about Google Maps.
oh, good Lord.
Google Maps is fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Fascinating because it is one of the most invasive breaches of public trust and the ability to have privacy. You should not be able to see whether I mow my lawn or not from your computer unless you are like at my house in my neighborhood. You know what I mean? But I remember I bought a house before I like knew how to own a house, and this is years ago. I didn't know how to set up the sprinklers or whatever, and my lawn died. And on Google Maps, you could see a big brown lawn, and I was like, that's invasive. That's in my backyard. It's fenced in. That's private, but it's useful enough that we've gotten past our initial shock and horror at the fact that there is a tech company that has photographed every road on the planet.
Wow.
Right? I
You
mean,
need to read The Circle. The Circle is a kind of a cool novel if you in your spare time, because I know you have so much of it. So
when I'm not sleeping 14 and a half hours.
yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
there's a I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's funny when since I'm an old person, I'm a huge fan of NCIS, and when they basically any crime is committed anywhere, you can usually find a camera that has caught it on camera.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's just
funny.
like 1984. Everybody was watched all the time.
Yeah, and that's only going to get more and more and more. You know, I mean, if you think about it, like Amazon, Google, Facebook, I can think of at least those three are all either currently selling or actively working on trying to get some sort of augmented vision system where you put a pair of glasses on or whatever, and it looks at things and tells you information, right? But journalists have gone undercover into the I don't know what you'd call them, but the factories, the data farms or whatever, where people are listening to what Alexa is hearing and telling Alexa or telling the software, the AI, the algorithm, whether or not it's interpreting that correctly. They were hearing, this journalist did this for a month or more or whatever, and heard passwords, heard intimate conversations, I was just listening.
Gosh.
Right? I mean, when Xbox and Xbox and PlayStation came out with like the camera that looked at you and like tracked your body movements and stuff, people freaked out. Out. Like, I'm not putting that in my home. And now we're used to it. Now we're like actively coming into it. It's this cycle that's described by Zuboff in the surveillance capitalism book that she wrote. That
I'm unfamiliar with it, but
it is nonfiction, so it's true, but it is more horrifying than any dystopian novel you've ever read. It's just a history. It's a history of the tech companies, from Google to Facebook to now, and what they've done. But anyway, there's a cycle. There's a cycle that they use where they introduce something, it shocks everyone, they pull it back, and then they introduce it in a different way. Several years later, it's weird, and then it becomes normalized, and then it becomes needed, and then it becomes the argument that they're trying to make is that it's inevitable. Is that progress in tech is inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't fight it. It's going to happen whether you get on board with it or not. And if something is perceived as inevitable, there's no point in resisting it. And so there's this narrative that comes from Silicon Valley that this is inevitable. It is inevitable that we photograph everything. It's inevitable that we track your biometric data. It's inevitable that all of this stuff is happening, that technology will roll on with or without you. And so there, you might as well get with it. That message of inevitability is actually one of the most sinister things to come out of Silicon Valley is that we have bought into the idea that there's nothing that we can do to stop basically the loss of all human life on Earth. I mean, that's where we're headed is just being fuel for the machines.
This is a fun conversation, man. It's just.
All right. I know you tell me I had a hard week, and I'm like, oh yeah, let me make you terrified about your future. Let's see if I can just ruin your weekend too.
Yeah.
No, but so I think there's hope. I think there's hope because of artists.
That's true.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I don't remember. We're going to go get a Christmas tree tomorrow. Should we bother? This is like,
I have faith and I have hope and I have actions. You know what I mean? I believe in the resiliency of the human spirit. I believe.
So do I. I do.
Believe that humankind, as horrible as we are and as collectively evil as we are at times, we trend towards good. We trend towards empathy. We trend towards there's something in each of us that pushes for justice and mercy and right, and otherwise we would have destroyed ourselves
a long time ago. I agree with that too. And
I believe that whatever you believe that is, you know, and I have certain beliefs of what I think it is, but whatever you believe that intrinsic drive is, you know, I believe that will overcome our current problems or curtail them in a way that they become helpful and useful. I think tech is useful. I like tech, I'm surrounded by it and everything, but I just think I think people should be aware, and they've done studies that when people are made aware of the data that's being gathered, that they don't like it, and that's it's the secrecy, it's the sinister nature, and it's the lies that tell us that there's nothing that we can do about it. I refuse to believe that I don't have agency, that I don't have the will to change and act things. I refuse to believe that individuals do not have an impact on society. I refuse to believe it. And as soon as somebody gives into that belief that I can't do anything, my vote doesn't matter, my art doesn't change anything, then they've become complicit with the destruction of humanity.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And yeah, I am afraid, but I am not without hope. I'm really not without hope. And I see, I actually think that's one of the, and I keep going back to movies and I keep going back to sci-fi or fantasy type movies. I think that's one of the reasons that Star Trek has such a following, because it gives people hope for the future.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I have to go watch the movie Tomorrowland again, because Tomorrowland basically talks about how the world is we're destroying ourselves, and I've talked about this before. We're destroying ourselves, and there's nothing we can do about it. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it in a lot of ways, it's the artists that are going to, and the creatives who are going to, and what they call the dreamers, who are going to make it possible for it not to happen, for us not to destroy ourselves. And I don't want to say anything else for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, because it's a Disney feel-good movie, but it's just a really good movie. Everybody should go out and see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides, it's got George Clooney, and what could be? How bad can it be?
Well, that's awesome.
And Hugh Laurie. So how bad can it be?
Oh, I didn't know Hugh Laurie is in it. I like
Oh
Hugh
yeah,
Laurie.
I do too.
It's awesome.
And
Well, Kathy, where can we find your stuff if we brighten our day and have some awesome animals in our
look
life?
at the animals, yes. PendragonArtStudios.com or KathyMooreWilson.com. I'm got that Linktree thing going on. And I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and PendragonArtStudios.com is my website. And that's about it.
Cool.
I mean, any of those places.
And you can find me at CoreyKerr.com. And if you want to find all of the things where I am and all of the places where I be, then you can go to CoreyKerr.com/online. And that'll have videos and writings and animations and illustrations and all the stuff.
Yes.
And Instagram and all that. So yeah, thanks for dropping in. Good chat today. Have a good weekend. Things
Yeah.
get better. As doom and gloom and as I am, I think it'll get better.
Yes. All right.
See ya.